for today's video, I am going to go over one of the most underappreciated yet very important food groups that can be instrumental to your weight loss / body transformation success. And it is the only food group that is guaranteed to fit in with any dietary approach. Whether you're doing 1 meal a day, keto, vegan, South Beach, North Beach, you name it. But before I tell you what that food group is, if you want to know the proper habits that teach you adherence and a way to personalize fast fat loss, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Okay, so the big reveal. The one key food group that you must have is going to be herbs and spices. Now, if you were expecting some secret Himalayan cheese or some secret vegetable that teaches you how to, lose 10 pounds in 5 days or something like that, then I am sorry to disappoint you. But if you truly care about seeing the best possible results for your short and long-term goals, then make sure to watch the video all the way until the end, so that you can better understand the incredible benefits of this one, or I should say two, food groups. So a spice is defined as a substance that is derived from a plant that will, for the most part, have a pungent taste. Some examples include cinnamon, cayenne, crushed red pepper, black pepper, cloves, cumin, turmeric, to name a few. The words spice and seasoning are often used interchangeably, and although their difference is more of a culinary technicality, it does matter a bit. With spices, which are the ones that we're talking about today, you can pretty much use them freely, as much as you want, without any restraint. With seasonings, you do have to be a little bit more careful, because seasonings are a mixture of different spices and other substances and other added ingredients that's taken away the natural element from it. What helps me differentiate, and what could help you differentiate between a spice and seasoning, is just thinking one ingredient. So if you come across something that is just one ingredient, such as black pepper, turmeric, paprika, things of that nature, then of course, then you're most likely going to be looking at a spice. Now, of course, you can use both of them. That's the point of the video. But with seasonings, you do have to be a little bit more careful, because with seasonings, of course, you may have added calories. You may have some ingredients that you may be allergic to. They might have extra sodium, which could potentially cause some water retention if you overdo it. So the only thing, of course, the big difference is you have to be a little bit more mindful with seasonings. Again, seasonings are going to be a mixture of different spices, herbs, which we'll get to in a second, other added substances, that takes away that single natural element. You do want to use both of them, just be more mindful of seasonings. And like I said, with spices, single ingredients, you can pretty much use them freely and as much as you want with your food. So to provide you with a quick example of what a seasoning looks like, I have this Red Hot Buffalo Ranch, which is a seasoning blend, and I'm going to be putting the label right here, right next to it, just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. With you got to watch out for things like this one doesn't have any calories, but it does have some sodium. And one of the most important habits that you have to have if you want to be successful in the long term is you have to always measure everything. So this one, of course, if you're not careful, you can overdo it in sodium. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing a teaspoon of this particular Buffalo Ranch seasoning blend. But if you're just sprinkling it up, you're just putting it on your meal, you're not paying attention, that could, again, like I said, lead to a little bit of water retention. So because it does have 80 milligrams per quarter of a teaspoon. So if you're doing half a teaspoon of this, or even up to a teaspoon, at least you know how much sodium you're putting into your food. Another quick example is this Creole mix right here, which 0 calories too, which is great, but it does have some added ingredients, and it does have a little bit of extra. It does have some sodium, which actually has a little bit more than the Buffalo Ranch blend. And then lastly, just to give you another one, is the Mccormick Bbq Seasoning. Now this one's a little bit trickier because there's no label, so of course you can still add it to your foods to add more flavor to it, but you don't want to be overdoing it, because I feel that one of the reasons they would omit the The nutrition label is because it probably has, maybe like 5 calories per tablespoon or something like that. So here we fall into this logic of, all spices are, seasonings, but not all seasonings are going to be spices. With herbs, they are very similar to spices in that they are also a single ingredient edible. They come from a plant for the most part and are used in small quantities because of their pungent and aromatic flavor. That's what differentiates them from leafy vegetables, in case you were wondering. Leafy vegetables, you can eat them in bigger quantities because they don't have that pungent or aromatic taste to them, whereas herbs are going to have those two properties. Some examples include basil, parsley, chives, oregano, cilantro, rosemary, thyme, to name a few. Alright, so you've watched this far and you're probably wondering, how and why is this important? Is this actually important to my body transformation success? 2 quick reasons. The first one, there's a quote by Mark Twain, which is, the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug. So there's another quote that is just as iconic, that is, the difference between a diet meal and a tasty meal is going to be the spices and herbs, me. So of course that reason is flavor, taste, palatability, whatever you want to call it, and it's just about enjoying your food and making it restaurant quality, which of course is going to make it less likely, it's going to make it less likely for you to deviate, because that meal that you're having now is not going to feel like a diet meal anymore, because you're going to be adding all of that flavor. And when I said at the beginning that this is one of the most underappreciated food groups, I mean, think about how much time do you actually spend, when you go to the grocery store and, you look at the spices and herbs and try to pick out a different one each time, or actually go through and see what would be something that you want to try. And when it comes to spices and herbs, it really does come down to having fun, being a little bit creative, being curious. You don't have to be a culinary expert, you don't have to be an expert chef, but it just really does boil down to being creative and just, I think more than anything, just being curious when it comes to this food group and just trying different combinations each time. Now of course you don't want to overdo it and put 10 different herbs and spices at once, because that's going to be overwhelming. For example, if you've never tried cloves, first time I tried them, I thought it was like black pepper, and if anybody that's out there that's tried cloves, they're probably laughing at me, because I tried. It's kind of like wasabi, where if you just do a little bit, it's still gonna be overwhelming. But I tried it. I knew that if I only added a little pinch to the dish, it was gonna add a bunch of flavor. So again, you don't have to go crazy and try all kinds of things at once, but just trying 1-2 different combinations each time, different herbs, is going to make a big difference. And by making these small adjustments that I'm talking about, you're just going to take your meal plan to a whole different level without adding any calories. And just like I said earlier, just to remind you, spices and herbs, I mean, we can talk about seasonings here a little bit. With those, you just have to be a little bit more mindful. I would say mostly because, if in case you're allergic to something, just look for the ingredients that are in that seasoning. The sodium, of course, if you're doing like a contest prep, or of course if you're trying to lose weight, you want to be mindful of that, because if you do something that's very high sodium, the next day you could retain a little bit of water, which could cause 1 or 2 pounds, 3 pounds of water retention the next morning when you weigh yourself. So just be a little bit more mindful of seasonings, but still try to incorporate them as much as you can. Alright, so before I go into the second reason, rather than just telling you, let me show you real quick what I'm talking about. Let's compare this omelet right here, which has absolutely nothing in it except for the 2 eggs, versus this omelet right here, which we haven't added stuff in it, but I want you to see the final product. Now granted, this omelet has a couple of vegetables in it, which, by the way, vegetables should be your number 1 condiment with every meal that you're cooking. I don't care what you're cooking, you should always be adding at least half a cup of vegetables to your food. Now vegetables of course would go into more of the category of condiments, but that's a topic for another time. So we have the omelet here with half a cup of vegetables, and we're gonna start just having a little bit of fun with it. And then I want you to look at how it's going to look at the end compared to the other one. So we put just a little bit of black pepper for some flavor, which this one, of course, you can add as you're cooking it. Then I'm going to add a little bit of crushed red pepper, just to add a little bit more of a kick to it. And then just a little bit of basil. And then some chives right there. And this one is just me. A little bit of sriracha sauce. And boom. Now compare this to this. For this example, I'm going to do a basic red chili and pork. Nothing but the red chili and the pork or the sauce in there. And what I'm going to do is just show you how this, simple meal with 2 ingredients can be taken to the next level simply by just adding a few, spices and herbs. And I'm just gonna add, pretty much all the ones that I had from the previous meal, from the omelet, just so that you can see just how even some of them, just 5 or 6 of them are gonna make a huge difference. So I'm gonna start with the spices first. I'm gonna put a little bit of black pepper. I'm going to put a little bit of cumin. I think cumin adds great flavor to spicy dishes. And of course, a lot of these you can add them as you're cooking the meal. And that's for my next example, for my last demonstration, I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. But just for the sake of visuals, I wanted to do this one before, or cooking it without the spices, so you could see just how what the flavor looks like. And then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic salt, and I've measured 1/4 teaspoon here, so I'm just going to add a little bit of that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of parsley. And then chives. And then of course this one, if you want to add some rosemary, some cilantro, whatever, you think would fit with that particular dish. And I'm going to have more variety on the next one. But yeah, I just wanted you guys to see how different that looks. For this one, I'm going to be showing you how to make a very tasty tomato and ground beef soup. Now, the point of this particular demonstration is so that you can pay attention to exactly how I'm using the spices and herbs. At the same time, I'm going to show you how to make a really tasty soup. And I'm going to go over each ingredient, then I'm going to go over, try to give an explanation as to why I'm using it. So one of the very first things that I like to do when I make the soup is, of course, add about a cup of vegetables and let them fry, let them stir fry for a little bit. So for this one, we're just going to be, I want you to just use some tomatoes and some onions, and just let them fry, for a couple of minutes, a couple seconds, just depending how brown you want them. I'd say, just medium heat for about 2 minutes should be fine. And then as you can notice here, I have some herbs that I'm going to be using more towards the end. So I have some thyme right here, I have some basil, and I have some more chives right here. And so yeah, we're going to let the vegetables fry. And of course, you can cook this in bulk. I think this is one of those meals that is great for meal prepping, or something that you can just make extra of, and then have it, readily available for when you come back from work, so you don't have to go out and eat junk food. So first, you're gonna let the vegetables fry for a little bit, and then I'm gonna be using a Hunt's tomato sauce. This is gonna be, let me see if you guys can see that. If you can see it, yep, there we go. It's gonna be 8 ounces, and one of the reasons that I'm gonna be using this is because it's no salt added. It has a little bit of salt, and it's only, so there is 5 grams per serving. So there's 2 grams of fiber. So there's actually 3 grams of net carb. And there is about 3.5 servings, so we'll just turn it to 4. So 4 times 3, there's about 12 grams of net carb in here, which is pretty good. So once the vegetables are, fried up or stir fried for a little bit, we can add the tomato sauce. We're gonna add the whole can. And actually, before we do that, I'm gonna add a little bit of minced garlic. This soup, you have to try it out. Really tasty. It's really filling. And depending on if you add a carb at the end, it can only be, you know, about 200 calories. Also depending on how much protein you use. So I mean, we're gonna do the ground beef here in a second. But I mean, it's really filling, and if you feel like you're not satisfied, you can just have more of the broth and not add the extra calories. So great recipe for helping you stay full. So we're gonna add the tomato sauce now. So we've added the minced garlic, you know, my couple vegetables. So then we're gonna add the tomato sauce in there. Alright, so far I haven't used any spices or herbs, but we're gonna do that here in just a second. So we're gonna let that you know, heat up for about a minute. And just while it finishes heating up, I want to show you real quick. Whenever you're gonna do soups, my biggest tip for you is make sure that you always look for the low sodium broths. And you know, it doesn't matter if you're doing vegetable broth, if you're doing chicken broth, if you're doing beef broth. It doesn't really matter for soup. I mean, this is just more of a taste preference, of course, whichever one you prefer. But always look for the low sodium ones, because broth, even though it's a great source of, you know, unless you're doing keto and you need to replace your minerals, it's gonna have, you know, it's gonna have a high amount of sodium. So this one we're only looking at 140 grams per cup, and I'm gonna be using about only about 2 cups here for this particular soup. Okay. Alright, so that's about, so there's 4 cups in here, so I used about half, so which is about 2 cups of broth. And then all I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna mix this up a little bit. Make sure that the tomato sauce and the broth are mixing in well together. And now here's where the magic's gonna happen, because we're gonna cover this for about 10 minutes to let the flavors really soak in and just let the broth, you know, just warm up a little bit. I'm going to start adding the spices and some of the herbs. Now, the unfortunate thing about this particular video is I can't show you taste, of course, but you know, like I said, just try it out. You know, you can play with these around, and at the end I'm going to have a little bit of a visual. It's not gonna, like I said, I can't really show taste, but at least you'll be able to see what a difference it makes when you add, you know, spices and herbs. So of course we're going to add black pepper, and like I said at the beginning, if it's a single ingredient such as like black pepper, paprika, cumin, oregano, you can pretty much, you know, I don't want to say you can go crazy, but you can be a little bit less careful and add as much as you want. I mean, for you to get like 1 gram of net carb for black pepper, you'd have to eat like 3 tablespoons worth. So I mean, that'd be really impossible to do. So I'm adding the black pepper in there. One of the more important ingredients for soup is oregano, so we're gonna add a little bit. You don't want to go too crazy, because again, with herbs you're gonna have a very pungent taste, very aromatic, so you don't want to go too crazy. So we add a little bit just for flavor. And then another one that you have to have with soups is going to be cumin, and again, another one that's going to be, well, I mean, all spices have a very pungent taste, so both spices and herbs, but herbs have more of that aromatic you know, taste to them. So just a little bit of cumin, and of course you can always, you know, taste it and see how it's coming up, you know, for your liking. And then cloves, I feel like this is another one that you gotta have for soups, but like I said at the beginning of the video, you don't want to go too crazy, so just a little bit of clove, literally that much, and then just mix it up. And then we're gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic salt, and then I'm legit going to measure it, because I mean, this is a great meal, but you don't want to feel bloated because of the sodium. So, you know, 1/4 teaspoon is only going to be about 200 milligrams. And see, and then once you, like I said, you know, you want to make that a habit. This is one of those very important habits that you have to have if you know, if you want to learn to be successful in the long term. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put the thyme in there. We're going to add the basil. We're going to add some of the chives. Okay. And then before I cover it, I'm going to show you what it looks like. And then I'm just going to let it sit for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to start with the ground beef. And then for the ground beef, I'm just going to use a little bit of black pepper. I don't want to go too crazy on that, so a little bit of black pepper and garlic salt. So we have our final product right here, our tomato soup, which is just about ready. And like I said, unfortunately I can't show you taste, but if you look at just like how loaded that looks, and there's no added calories. This would have been the same as if it would have just been the tomato sauce and the broth, but because of all the other stuff, I mean, it's just full of flavor. Now to complete the soup, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the ground beef, and this is lean ground beef right here, so it's about 6.5 ounces. Of course, if you're doing keto or doing like a paleo, you can add a little bit more fat. Since I'm eating a high carb diet at the moment, I'm trying to keep my fats a little bit low. So we're gonna add the soup in there, or the ground beef into the soup. And now once we add the full soup, or once we add all of the ground beef into the soup, it's gonna make it look thicker. And I don't think I mentioned how much of how many cups this is. So this is gonna be about 1.5 cups, or about the 2 cups that we used from the broth. And look at that. Now, to take this to the next level, so keep in mind this is 180 calories at the max. No, probably more like 200, 220 at the max, 180 at the lowest. So keep in mind all of the stuff that we added is going to add amazing flavor, and there's no additional calories. Now we're going to take this soup one final step. We're going to take it to the next level, and we're gonna make it taste like one of those soups that you have at restaurants, like the like the soup of the day type of thing. When you go to those fancy restaurants and they have the soup of the day or whatever. So this is exactly what we're doing right here. So we're gonna add some onion. So I understand this is not an herb, but we're gonna add some vegetable. Now we're gonna add a herb, which is going to be cilantro. We're going to add a little bit of chives, and then one thing that you can't see but is gonna add a ton of flavor is gonna be some lemon juice, which I have right here. Of course you can get fresh squeezed lemons, but if you're trying to save some time, these are a great idea. And then you just add that in there, and boom, look at that. Second reason why you want to incorporate spices and herbs is because most spices and herbs are going to contain medicinal properties that can be very beneficial to your health. For example, did you know that parsley helps with bloating, as parsley is a really good diuretic? And that actually goes for a lot of herbs. Most herbs are pretty good diuretics, and they can help you get rid of any extra water retention that you may be holding in your body. Another property from an herb would be something like rosemary, which is actually a cognitive stimulant, and rosemary has been shown to improve memory and your alertness as well. With spices, for example, we got things like turmeric, which are good for inflammation and can help improve your arthritis. Black pepper is good to help you with the bioavailability of foods. And cinnamon has been shown to reduce your blood sugar and help boost your metabolism. So that's why some people would say that cinnamon is a good fat burner, but it's not so much that it's a fat burner, it just helps boost your metabolism a little bit. Now the big disclaimer here is that the herbs and spices, although they have medicinal properties, are not meant to be substituted for something else. They're used to enhance what you're already doing to improve your health. So for example, if you have type 1 diabetes, don't go telling your doctor that you're going to stop taking insulin because now you're going to start taking tablespoons full of cinnamon. That's just silly, of course. But once you're already doing something about your health, once you're already losing weight, those medicinal properties are going to be more potent. So hopefully this video gave you some awareness, and more importantly, a whole different way to look at your cooking and the way that you prepare things. Because remember that most of your success, up to 90% of your success, is gonna start in the kitchen and is gonna end in the kitchen. And hopefully with this video you got some value in that you don't have to spend an extra 10 minutes making something taste good. If you just simply add the spices and herbs and a little bit of seasonings here and there, it's gonna make your meals taste a whole lot better. They're gonna taste a lot more different. They're gonna taste like restaurant quality. And again, just a quick summary, remember that spices are usually going to be anything that's single ingredient. Herbs are derived from plants, and they usually have a pungent and aromatic taste. And with seasonings, of course, you can still have them, not as much, but not as freely as the spices. The only difference is with seasonings, you just have to be a little bit more mindful in when and how much you use them, because it's going to be a combination of different substances. So once again, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you found some value in it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, as I'm going to be uploading more videos and more testimonials here in the next couple of days.